but okay, I know that it works. Very good. I will call this meeting to order. Wish everyone a good afternoon. Welcome everyone to today's subcommittee hearing on the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration FY08 budget request. This important agency provides warnings to our citizens of severe weather, charts our seas and skies, guides the management of our ocean and coastal resources, and conducts research to improve our understanding of the environment. NOAA is a diverse agency with many important missions and responsibilities. However, issuing watches and warnings of severe storms may be the role for which NASA is most famous. In Texas, we experience severe storms every year in the form of tornadoes and hurricanes. In 2005, the Gulf Coast experienced one of the worst natural disasters in American history when Hurricanes Katrina and Rita slammed into our coastline back to back. Texas was hit especially hard by Rita, causing billions of dollars in damage. Fortunately, many lives were saved as a result of the forecasting done by NOAA's National Hurricane Center and the local forecasting offices of the National Weather Service. Accurate prediction of hurricanes and other severe storms and sound management of our ocean and coastal resources can only be achieved through sound investments in the personnel, equipment, and research at NOAA. While there are some encouraging features of this year's budget request for NOAA, the administration has once again requested less funding for NOAA in 2008 than Congress appropriated in past years. The administration's budget provides few opportunities to expand NOAA's capacity to fulfill its diverse missions. If NOAA is to advance its capabilities to forecast the weather, if we are to restore our fisheries and coastal ecosystems to a productive and healthy state, if we're to advance our understanding of the oceans and the atmosphere, we must invest additional funds in this agency. I've said it 1,000 times that an investment will give us significant return when we make those investments. If they're done right. We continue to be concerned about the procurements for the new polar and geostationary weather satellite systems. It is essential that we have these new systems completed and delivered in time to avoid any gaps in coverage of weather data. I'm also concerned about the long-term implications of the cost overruns in the Polar Satellite Program, NEPOESS, for NOAA's budget in the future. The committee will continue to follow both of these procurements closely. On the positive side, the administration included funding for an integrated ocean observing system, funding for the National Integrated Drought Information System, NOAA's wind profilers, and funding to complete the tsunami warning network. I also support the provision of funds to cover the cost of pay raise for NOAA employees. The work NOAA does every day impacts our everyday lives and supports our economy. I look forward to hearing the testimony of our witnesses who are here today, and I thank you very much. Your views on the administration's budget proposal and your recommendations for improving NOAA's capabilities in the atmospheric and ocean sciences. At this time, I'd like to recognize our distinguished ranking member, Mr. Inglis from South Carolina, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here today with us. And good afternoon. This hearing about the President's fiscal year 2008 request for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is an important part of what we do here at the Science Committee. This is a tight budget climate, and given all the competing demands for federal resources, this appears to be a balanced budget request for NOAA. It maintains ongoing operational needs while providing for some new initiatives that have been recommended by the U.S. Commission on Ocean Policy. I'm particularly interested in the budget for the National Weather Service. This arm of NOAA provides vital services that our citizens and economy depend on every day. My state of South Carolina faces threats from hurricanes, occasional ice storms, if you can believe it, and flooding, just to name a few. Without the timely and accurate forecast and warnings provided by the Weather Service, we'd be in the dark about these dangers, and so I want to make sure that the Weather Service continues to have the resources to do its great work. NOAA also provides important information services for other parts of our coastal communities, or other aspects for our coastal communities. While I recognize that many in the ocean community would like to see an even larger budget for NOAA, I'd give Admiral the credit for the new initiatives in the fiscal year 2008 budget request that reflect priorities in the President's Ocean Action Plan. At a time when many agencies face flat or declining budgets, he convinced the administration to invest $123 million in programs that will improve our understanding and stewardship of coastal and ocean resources. We're grateful for your work on that, Admiral. Thank you to both of you for being here, and we look forward to hearing more of the details of the NOAA's proposed budget for 2008. I yield back the balance of my time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Inglis. I ask unanimous consent that all additional opening statements, and we have so many members here today, submitted by the subcommittee members be included in the record. Without objection, so ordered. We do have one small problem. I think we can get our opening statements out of the way in convenient time, but we will have a vote that'll come up probably in sometime in the next 5, maybe less than 10 minutes. We've got adequate time, I believe, to have both of your statements made, and then if y'all will forgive us, we'll run off, get back as quickly as we possibly can. So it's a pleasure to introduce the excellent panel of witnesses that we have with us here this afternoon. Vice Admiral Conrad Lautenbacher is the Undersecretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere and Administrator of NOAA. And Dr. Lynn Pietrafesa is the Associate Dean of External Affairs and Professor of Ocean and Atmospheric Sciences at North Carolina State University, and is the former chair of NOAA's Science Advisory Board. So we welcome you both very much. You will each have 5 minutes for your spoken testimony. Your full written testimony will be included in the record for the hearing. And when each of you have completed your testimony, we will begin with questions. And each member will have 5 minutes to question the panel, and we will rotate as normal. Admiral Lautenbacher, would you please begin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Inglis, members of the staff. We appreciate very much this opportunity to be able to testify on behalf of the 2008 budget. We thank this committee for its continuing support. This committee has been very important to the ability of NOAA to carry out its mission, and we look forward to working with you to build the best budget possible for the country. This year, I think everyone's aware, NOAA is celebrating 200 years of science, service, and stewardship to the nation. NOAA, the precursor of NOAA, it was the first scientific agency in the United States government, seen fit to be brought into existence by President Thomas Jefferson and the Congress in those days. Since that point, we have been joined by the Weather Bureau, the Commission on Fish and Fisheries in the 1870s, and up till today, where we have satellites on a fabulous research branch that works for us. So it's been a long road. Our folks are very proud of their contributions, and we are looking forward to celebrating this legacy this year. Before I mention a couple of details on the 2008 request, allow me to mention just a couple of the accomplishments that have occurred in the past year, thanks to the support of Congress. In June, the President designated the northwestern Hawaiian Islands as a marine national monument, encompassing nearly 140,000 square miles. This monument includes 4,500 square miles of relatively undisturbed coral reef habitat that is home to more than 7,000 species, a quarter of which do not exist anywhere else on Earth. For the first time, NOAA will play a leading role in managing a national monument. It's an exciting and important opportunity for NOAA. We've also increased the security of our nation's folks living around the coastlines. We have a combination of new tsunami buoys and around-the-clock warning capability thanks to support from Congress. And NOAA has 23 special buoys around the U.S. coast. Plans call for the U.S. Tsunami Warning Network to include 39 buoy stations by midsummer 2008, with 32 in the Pacific and 7 in the Atlantic. NOAA has also achieved full 24/7 operation of the nation's 2 tsunami warning centers located in Alaska and Hawaii, which provide warnings and alerts to the nation and to our nation and to the nations of the Pacific Rim. NOAA collaborated with federal partners to place a NOAA weather radio in every public school in America, and the support of this committee has been very important in NOAA weather radio. That's more than 97,000 radios to aid in protecting our children. Our weather radios, all hazards, provide automatic alerts for severe weather, man-made disasters such as chemical spills and terrorism threats, as well as Amber Alerts for missing children. My written testimony presents the details of the budget. It is aligned in several priority areas. First of all, sustaining critical operations, and then supporting our U.S. Ocean Action Plan, mentioned previously, improving weather warnings and forecasts, and climate monitoring and research, all important to today's society and economy. I will highlight just a few of the key increases in these areas. The total request is $3.8 billion, which represents a $131 million or 3.4% increase over the fiscal year 2007 request. But as mentioned, it is a $96 million decrease from the FY 2006 enacted level. The budget does provide modest new investments in priority areas while maintaining critical services. Approximately $54 million in net increases will support our workforce, which is mentioned again is the critical part of what we provide to the country, and pay for regular inflation costs. Continued implementation of the President's Ocean Action Plan, which follows on the Ocean Policy Commission and the Pew Commission, remains a priority for the administration. As mentioned, the budget requests $123 million to increase to support the plan, $60 million for ocean science and research, $38 million to protect and restore marine and coastal areas, and $25 million to ensure sustainable use of our oceans. Specifically, the budget requests $16.4 million for the Integrated Ocean Observing System, or IOS, for development of regional systems and improved data management and communications. It also includes $8 million for enforcement and management activities in the newly designated Northwestern Hawaiian Islands National Marine Monument. To improve weather forecasts and warnings, our budget requests an increase to $5 million to support operations and maintenance of hurricane data buoys and research on hurricane intensity that will ultimately save lives. More than $23 million in total is requested to continue strengthening the U.S. tsunami warning system, which is including an increase of about $2 million for additional deep ocean buoy stations. Climate monitoring and research increases of $9.4 million will support the development of an integrated drought early warning and forecast system that will enhance our nation's food security by providing earlier and more accurate drought forecasts. I appreciate the efforts again of this committee in passing the NIDIS legislation last year. Let me conclude briefly by talking briefly about two oversight issues which I know are important to this committee and certainly to NOAA. There have been many challenges with our satellite programs, and NPOS in particular. Let me assure the committee that I am doing everything along with my organization to ensure this program stays on track. We have made numerous personnel changes. We are implementing every recommendation from the GAO and the Department of Commerce Inspector General, and I meet with the Undersecretary of the Air Force and the NASA Administrator once a quarter and more often if necessary to review this program. Satellites are complex and risky tools, but they are vital to all aspects of NOAA's mission. I also want to assure the committee that the Department of Commerce is in the final stage of updating its communication policy, which will ensure our scientists have, for the foreseeable future, the freedom to speak, openly communicate their science to the media and public. Open and free scientific debate is an important principle that I maintain personally and within the organization. Again, thank you for this opportunity to present the budget. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Admiral Lautenbacher. I would now call on Dr. Pietrafesa.
Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Inglis, thank you for this opportunity to participate in this hearing regarding NOAA and its budget proposal for FY08. Today I'm appearing on behalf of the Friends of NOAA Coalition, consisting of over 40 very diverse entities, all NOAA stakeholders. A copy of a letter sent by the Friends Coalition to this committee in support of an adequate budget for NOAA for FY08 is attached to my testimony. At the $4.5 billion level, which is $15 per American annually, NOAA would be able to better serve our nation. The American people need and deserve the most comprehensive, objective, accurate, and timely environmental information possible. The value of these services to the nation, save for D-Day, has never been greater. What is the broad brush economic importance of NOAA to the nation? Department of Commerce statistics show that weather and climate-sensitive industries account for more than 1/3 of the nation's GDP. 75% of the nation's gross state product comes from the coastal states, and 50% of the nation's economy derives from the coastal counties, where NOAA roles support these significant economic activities. Annually, there are 1.5 million highway accidents and 7,100 deaths that are weather-related. $4.5 billion is lost annually just due to weather-related air traffic delays, such as the 3,600 canceled flights this past weekend. Investments in road and aviation weather infrastructure and research would greatly reduce these numbers and economic impacts. Total annual federal spending for weather information is but $25 per household. Aquaculture represents a $1 billion a year industry for U.S. fish farmers and $6 billion per year in retail sales, yet we presently import 80% of the fish we consume. As the nation's appetite for seafood grows, the U.S. will need an additional 4.5 billion pounds per year. Here, NOAA must lead this effort. The recently released NRC report, the Decadal Survey, points out that the U.S. Earth integrated observation capability is lacking and puts our nation's global economic competitiveness at risk. Lloyd's of London has stated that we cannot afford to deny climate trends that may likely lead to $100 billion individual mega catastrophes in insured losses, and that U.S. environmental observing assets and products that should be provided are crucial and critical to avoiding these industry-threatening costs. Long-term sustained data is needed to quantify climate trends. Here, the NOAA National Climatic Data Center's archive of data and information is critical for all federal agencies and for its huge economic worth to industry. But chronic underfunding prevents us from capitalizing on new advances in knowledge, new technology, and innovative ideas, and in this context, disarray and delay in developing our Earth-observing systems makes no sense to me. The cost of an integrated ocean observing system that builds out the essential federal monitoring backbone in the nation's coastal waters, including the Great Lakes, will be $250 million a year. But the value to the nation of greatly improved forecasts, including ecological, will be in the many billions, tens of billions of dollars per year. I, along with the Pew and COP commissions and many members of the Friends Coalition, believe that an organic act would significantly strengthen NOAA. A comprehensive NOAA Organic Act should address the following key issues: management, assessment, prediction, operations, and applications, research and education with external partners, and educational engagement of the public. As this committee knows, the idea of making NOAA into an independent agency is not new and is controversial. But OMB should assess the NOAA budget in the context of other major agencies and departments within its Natural Resource Programs Directorate. In this context, the linkages that exist between NOAA, NASA, and NSF must be acknowledged and understood. Enactment of a NOAA Organic Act provides a useful forum for the consideration of such a proposal. In conclusion, the Friends of NOAA Coalition appreciates the severe budgetary constraints under which the Congress is working. However, we believe that the case for the NOAA budget is so compelling that we urge the Congress to support an appropriation of at least $4.5 billion and to support the legislation which would codify and strengthen the agency. The Friends Coalition is deeply grateful for the opportunity to participate in this hearing, and I'd be happy to respond to any question you and the members of the committee might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, let's start in with the questioning. As I said before, we will go back and forth between each of the sides as normal. There's an old saying that we all know, that something's not broken, don't fix it. With that thought in mind, what is the current status of NOAA's concept of operations plan for changing the configuration of local weather forecasting offices of the National Weather Service? Admiral?
We have there it goes. Now it's on. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought it was on. Excuse me. For the past couple of years, obviously, to try to be as efficient as possible we can with the taxpayer resources, for looking for ways to be more efficient with services from our forecast offices. We have not fully fleshed out all of the ideas that I think are relevant in that area. We are looking at ways to deal with that, and basically the current idea is on hold while we look at ways to modify it or change it. But we are going to continue with the service that we have today and not make any changes until it new ideas can be tested and be thoroughly vetted with our unions and our personnel.
Are you looking at trying to achieve a cost savings in the Weather Service operations?
We need to involve building new products. So when I talk about being saving money, we are trying to figure out how to take care of some of the needs that we have that are not covered today by being able to be more efficient in the way we do business. I like to prefer to say it that way.
And I assume that's a yes?
Well, we have a lot of need to provide climate forecasting, ecosystem forecasting, and extensions of our hazardous weather forecasts. So there's more that can be done and needs to be done as the nation grows, and we need ways to be able to accommodate that within our program. So looking for ways to deliver that service in a more efficient way is one of the things that we're trying to work on.
Has there been any effort to try to look at it in terms of a percentage or dollar terms as what kind of savings you might be interested in trying to achieve?
We have not set a target for. Our target is to be more efficient, but maintain the service that we have today with room for more service. So there's no target. There's no you must save 5%. You must save 10%. We have found that in an area where you're providing 24/7 emergency coverage for the nation is not the right way to go about delivering those services. Arbitrary cuts generally don't work.
In the agency briefing to staff in January on the CONOPS plan, General Johnson indicated that NOAA would, quote, demonstrate operability, performance, and effectiveness before committing to changes, unquote. What activities are you planning to demonstrate operability, performance, and effectiveness?
Well, right now they're looking at ways to set up a testing process. I haven't approved the final testing process yet, so I can't sit here and tell you exactly how that'll be done. But we have to do a test in a way that's fair, that doesn't eliminate any service, and that goes along with the congressional advice on and indications on what we should do with our spending. So we intend to honor those indications that we have from Congress.
And is the agency planning to obtain comments from the outside community of the National Weather Service, stakeholders, state and local emergency managers, for example, who rely on local forecasting office personnel for information and assistance?
Absolutely. I run active forum with our stakeholders as well as General Johnson, and that is clearly any changes we make are always discussed with our stakeholders.
Are NOAA's employees fully informed of the agency's plans, and are they being included in the planning and demonstration of the proposed changes?
Yes, they are, and they will be.
This committee has been following the NPOESS program closely for years now, and it's well over budget and behind schedule. The risk of a gap in our weather data is still quite high. The estimate for the procurement of the new geostationary satellite series is well above the previous estimate, but there is no indication in this budget or in any recent budgets that the administration has presented to this Congress that any adjustments are being made to accommodate the budget realities associated with the true costs of your satellite procurement programs. It looks like the administration's plan is to pass the bill for all of this onto the next administration. Now, even a small cost overrun by satellite procurement standards translates into significant amounts of money where NOAA's other programs are concerned. Where are the additional funds that are needed to continue support for the existing essential programs at NOAA?
The funding that's in our budget and that is projected, which we provided as Congress asked for the next 5 years, is the restructured NPOS program. That represents a fully funded program that will deliver the Nunn-McCurdy reviewed program, which was briefed to the committee. The numbers for this year is 100% of the funding that's needed to maintain this program on track and to minimize the risk. And the numbers that we have in the out years, 09, 10, are the projections. We intend to work hard to ensure that the funding remains on track and that the program that we briefed to you will be delivered at this point on track. and I will fight for the funds to try to do that.
Even in the out years?
Even in the out years, I'm a shameless advocate of these programs, and I will continue to fight to get what I think is right, sir.
Thank you very much. I will now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Inglis, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral Lautenbacher, you mentioned that, we're talking about a number of things recently when you and I had an opportunity to get together, and I'm particularly interested in wildfires and planning for droughts and how NOAA might be helpful in that way. Is that something that you currently do?
Yes, we do. We are involved in providing warnings for wildfires. We use satellites to help us get the information of where wildfires might be starting, and then we use the atmospheric information that we get from the satellites as well as ground-based information to plot smoke, plumes, and we provide tailored forecasts to firefighters on scene. And when there is a significant fire, we deploy what we call an IMET, a well-trained meteorologist with a field computer receiving station right to the command post on site in the firefighting to provide, which is the most important thing you can do for firefighters, is to give them an idea of what's happening locally with winds and precipitation and temperatures. That's what we do that, and that's a normal service, and we intend to try to make it better. We're looking at doing better models. We're looking at improving the links with our satellites and the use of more information, and working with the Department of Agriculture, the Forestry Service, and the other folks, the states and the local emergency managers. It's an important part of our mission.
How about the long-range aspects of that? Any ability to predict a drought in this planting season, for example, such that it wouldn't be wise to plant somewhere because we see that this is coming, or are we that good, or is that ways away still?
It's not far away, and thanks to the bill of Congress that you all helped pass last year, the NIDIS bill, the Integrated Drought Information System, is going to create a network that uses the federal networks as well as local networks, private networks, to build a much finer scale of information that can be brought in to produce models that will give us a much better handle on predicting the future. We believe that with the integrated ocean observing system that was just talked about, in addition to the new sensors on satellites, that we will be able to do things like accurately forecasting seasonal conditions, so that planting and crop rotation and management of livestock can be done on a much more economically sound basis, taking into account environmental conditions. I believe that we're at the threshold of being able to do that.
Dr. Pietrafesa, you testified, I believe, that the funding level you'd recommend is $4.5 billion. As I understand it, we're at $3.8 billion in this request. And climate change is obviously a significant topic around here. Is that, do you think that the $3.8 billion is sufficient to have NOAA be gathering the information that we need, or is how do you think we'll fare with at the $3.8 billion level?
I don't believe we'll fare very well, and the reason is in various parts of NOAA there are activities that will contribute to our better understanding of climate, but for lack of the distributed observing network, the global observing network that's required, let alone the observing network in the coastal areas of the United States, the Great Lakes, and even over land, we're lacking the data that's needed and the precision of the data, the resolution of the data that's required to really detect climate signals. That said, our ability to archive and store the data and to make that data, to scrub that data, make that data available in near real time or real time to industry, to university researchers, and to federal agency researchers and information providers is compromised because the budgets are so tight. For example, I could see one of the issues that really challenged the Science Advisory Board was the fact that NOAA simply can't afford to invest as much money as we believe it could, or it should rather, into the data activity. and NOAA has made every effort to improve its data archiving and access facilities and capabilities, but they're just undercapitalized in that area. Also, the assessments of those data require different kinds of mathematical methodologies, both deterministic and statistical and empirical. And that requires an investment not only in the computers to be able to analyze those massive data sets, but to integrate those data sets with each other. And these are diverse, different, but complementary data sets that need to be integrated if one is going to truly resolve what the relationships are between different climate factors and the weather delivery systems that evolve from these climate conditions. And that takes people, that takes personnel, that takes extramural engagement, that is engagement of the extramural community, the university community, private industry, along with the NOAA scientists, and that's a considerable enterprise. So if just in the data area, we saw that another $25 to $50 million would go a long way towards improving the capability of the agency to deliver more timely climate information and better climate information, more advanced climate information, and in fact to get into the downscaling and upscaling of the climate to weather models and vice versa. And these are not just weather models. It doesn't end with the weather models. It actually could move into the ecological area. So one could anticipate ecological impacts from various climate conditions, along with socioeconomic impacts. The Science Advisory Board believes that it is entirely possible to go from physical phenomenon to socioeconomic impacts in a seamless way through some complex mathematics and assimilation of the data that NOAA has in its archives or should be and could be collecting in its archives were it not undercapitalized.
The gentleman from Washington, the chairman of the Science, Education, and Research Committee on Science, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, gentlemen. Being from Washington State, we're obviously very interested in NOAA's activities. Particularly, I want to ask a question about the resources available. Almost by its nature, NOAA's going to have to spend a lot of time in the water. And what do you have adequate resources, and what sorts of resources do you need for two main missions, both enforcement and research?
Those are fully loaded questions.
They're not meant to be loaded. I know they're broad.
No, they're broad. But enforcement, I believe that we have the right amount of money in our budget to be able to deal with the enforcement. And what's important about our enforcement budget is that it leverages state assets and resources. So we have a part of our budget is designed to have cooperative agreements with each of the states that bring their Department of Fisheries and Wildlife and DNR people in. So we have seamless enforcement of our rules between the state waters and between the federal waters.
I've been told that some of your vessels are kind of aging, to say the least, and not up to the task of tracking down people who are violating our maritime laws. And then that's really, on the enforcement side, that's the nature of my concern. If we've got these wonderful sanctuaries or other zones of protection or just national interest, you guys have the folks who can track down somebody who's an intruder, spend the time out in the region themselves, in the real world in the region, and then if somebody does intrude or violate laws, track them down. That's the essence of what I'm asking.
I understand your question. The sanctuaries have small boats that they do use for enforcement activities inside the marine sanctuaries, of which, of course, there's a number on the West Coast. We try to recapitalize those boats with what we have. Obviously, the fleet is aging, but we are able to each year to replace a few and try to move on. We also use cooperative agreements. Again, Fish and Wildlife helps us in places where we have adjoining types of preserves and national monument areas and national management areas. And the states help us as well, but in fact, it is difficult at times to maintain full coverage of all of our national marine sanctuaries. They have their large areas, and that is true.
The second question, Admiral, in particular, Doctor, if the research side, do we have the vessels, the kinds of vessels we need? Well, I remember talking to somebody a couple of years ago, and the nature of the vessels, if they wanted to study an area, they weren't equipped to go overnight for a couple of days, and so they were having to go out, study during the day, and come back. And sort of common sense says, one, that's not the most economical way. If you had the seakeeping capacity and the berths and whatnot to spend a couple of days there, you could save all that transit time. Plus, you're in the environment more. You can do real-time, continuous observation versus... Anyway, any thoughts on that?
We have been able to, in the last couple of years, with some congressional help, to provide some larger vessels. There's a new one now at the Monterey Bay Sanctuary that allows us to go overnight for several days and do the kinds of research activities that you've mentioned. I think this new boat is a good prototype for the future. We're looking, as we can build the capital budgets, to be able to put more of these in our sanctuaries, but they are an important adjunct to research.
Thank you, Admiral. Doctor, any comments on that?
We talked, or I mentioned earlier, the integrated ocean observing system. Part of the activity of deploying and maintaining and recovering and keeping this system alive is actually a research activity, because the kinds of systems that have been deployed in the past are not necessarily real time, but all of the NOAA assets have been real time, but some of the new observing systems are capable of observing, for example, wave spectra, that is the propagation of waves, and also tell you not just the amplitude of the waves, but which way they're moving. And getting that data back in real time is a challenge because, you know, you're collecting data at every half second. And so you need wide bandwidth, and you need to be able to talk to the instruments out in the ocean. So it has to be two-way communication. But those sensors are still in developmental stages. And NOAA is going to have to develop a strategy to maintain those systems once they are shown to be very valuable, particularly in predicting things like riptides, for example, which take so many lives per year. And once they get into that game, they're going to have to be able to get back out there to service these instruments. It's not going to be an annual servicing, but rather it may have to be every 6 months.
So that'll need to be in the budget.
That needs to be in the budget as well.
Admiral, just to educate me, NIMS is part of your budget, correct?
Yes, it is.
How does your budget, one of the challenges we've faced in the Northwest has been with the listing of salmon, steelhead, and Nederman species, the permitting times are extraordinarily costly to our economy. I recognize the importance of your job in trying to do the environmental review process, but when we don't have enough personnel to move permits quickly, literally hundreds of millions of dollars and significant opportunity costs result. So I'd be interested, first of all, in your comments on your budget as it relates to personnel to process permits. Secondly, I want to commend some of your folks in the district. We've really initiated, my request, some collaborative efforts where NIMS works with Fish and Wildlife, works with Corps of Engineers, works with EPA as needed, and with state agencies to do simultaneous parallel processing of permits, to work on programmatic kinds of permits. Any comments either on that approach and or personnel would be much appreciated.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for recognizing the issues that we have with permitting. We have some additional money, not a lot, in this budget to help improve the permitting system and get a few more people on it. It is one of the issues that generally is not recognized as important, in my view, as it ought to be. I'm a strong advocate for increasing resources in that area. Each year I try to do as much as I can to improve both in the marine mammal protection area as well as in the fishery permits and the consultations that we have to do for various other licensing that occurs for power dams and all that other thing. I'm a big fan of the streamlining and of simultaneous processes. We've tried to bridge, make strong bridging agreements with the Interior Department and local areas so we can do things simultaneously and try to improve, and EPA as well, to try to improve it. I strongly support all efforts to make that a collaborative effort.
I appreciate that. I know my time's expired. The last comment I would make is, I personally believe that investing in additional permitting personnel would vastly pay back the taxpayers in terms of expedited review process.
I want to continue a little bit of what Mr. Baird was talking about, because while he's having a problem with salmon in one place, I'm having a problem with redfish in another place. And I know how important rebuilding stocks are, and it's a priority of the administration, but what's been requested, $3.96 billion, is about 2.7% below the FY06 appropriated funding, including $795.9 million for the National Marine Fisheries Service, nearly $8 million less than what was appropriated in FY06. So for the past year, I've been literally being beaten up over concerns from across the Texas Gulf Coast regarding stock assessments, especially when it comes to red snapper. There are commercial interests, there are recreational anglers, which is a significant part of the economy there. In my district and in surrounding districts, along with commercial shrimpers. Both shrimpers and commercial boats have experienced losses in recent years, with some being literally forced out of business. One of the largest and most popular snapper fishing party boats just recently announced that he could no longer stay in business because of limits and size restrictions, seasons and size restrictions. Anglers have to throw back catch that's deemed too small, and one of the problems with catching red snapper, which is a very deep a fish that goes into very deep water, if you pull a fish up very quickly, as one does in fishing, and you find out that it is not the right size and you have to release it, it's dead. And so we're throwing a good resource, and then that means that I get to catch more of those fish and pull them up and kill them as well. And if they're not the right size, then we throw them overboard as well. So we've got some serious problems here that have been being discussed for a long time, but don't seem to be reaching a point of solution. It results in higher mortality rates and consequently lower stocks, and then are being forced to comply with shorter and shorter seasons, which is supposed to help in rebuilding the stock, but I'm not convinced that it is. Is this budget request, same question, is this budget request sufficient to perform the real research necessary to provide adequate stock assessment and management?
We have a couple of comments. The Magnuson-Stevens bill under which we manage fishery was just reauthorized by Congress last year. So it is a bill that includes actually stronger provisions in it to prevent overfishing. The administration has added another $6.5 million to try to accommodate the work that goes on. Some of that is to improve the amount of effort that goes into the science, so that we don't have the debates on what is the right science for this.
How does that fit with this, which has been decreased?
Well, that's the overall. Well, you were talking about the section of the National Marine Fisheries Service budget, and I will point out to you that that is the area that was, shall we say, least reduced from the enacted level. It is almost at the same level as Congress had left it in FY06. So there's not. That area is not a big change. There's changes if you look across. $8 million. $8 million out of 800. $8 million out of 800, roughly. I mean, those are the numbers you're looking at, I think, right? Around 790 something, 804. I haven't got it in front of me, but the fisheries service of all of our areas is closer to being what Congress authorized in previous years. So while none of our areas are up to the level, as has been pointed out by all of you, that we are roughly $100 million down from the enacted levels that we are working on this year with the continuing resolution. But these are increases over what the administration asked for last year. I come before Congress with the continued offers to work with Congress to make sure that the money is is put in the right places, that together the nation uses it as well as we can. But we have added more money to help us with Magnuson-Stevens, which is the
Okay.
what you're commenting on.
What about in working with other agencies, for example, Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, other states' agencies, to increase data collection efforts, especially when it comes to licensing of recreational anglers and tracking of charter boats? Additional work being done?
There's $3 million to try to improve that effort. We recognize that in the National Academy, we asked for a National Academy report, that we need to have better information for recreational anglers. That it is obviously a major part of our economy and of our coastal management issues.
Would you like to make a comment on this, Dr. Pietrafesa? My time has expired, but I think it
Sure.
would be...
This is an area where I believe that investments would really be wise and would be very productive. As I said in my testimony, we're going to be, the U.S. appetite for seafood is such that we're going to need an additional 4.5 billion pounds to appear in our supermarkets over the very short term in the future. And we see that, or I see at least, that there are two approaches that could be taken. One is that we need to be investing in research that looks at the stocks, the strengths of the stocks, also the year-class strengths of the recruits, as relates to climate factors and weather conditions. You know, changes in precipitation, river discharge, and the like, changes in how the loop current in your part of the world, how the transport of the loop current changes from year to year or even season to season. And so that is how the wild stock varies as a function of naturally occurring phenomenon. On the other side, we need research on creating new agricultural industries. And so, and if you're going to invest $3 million a year in regulation, seems to me that centers of excellence could be created at least the order of $6 million, at least initially, that could be located at some key locations around the country where agriculture research could be done along with climatological, weather, ecological research that could be done. So one could look at the agriculture approach as well as the wild stock approach to better understand the natural system as well as growing and raising new stocks.
I have a personal request, Admiral Lautenbacher, and that is that you help me find some way that I can personally work with the folks at NMFS and see if we can't get them to better listen to the tens of thousands of sports fishermen who really know, particularly the Western Gulf. My guess is that many know other areas of the Gulf of Mexico as well. But these people truly feel that they are not being heard and listened to by this agency. That's a personal request on my part, and I would be honored if you would work with me on that. And at this time, I will recognize Mr. Inglis.
I thought you were going to ask him to help you identify where the big ones were. Or that's what I thought.
I think you can find those.
Admiral Lautenbacher, back to the climate change issue. Help me understand NOAA's role in all that the federal government is doing about climate change. I take it you have a fair amount of the responsibility for the work that's going on, right? NASA also is involved, spends a lot of money on satellites. How does that break down? How do you describe the role of NOAA as compared to other agencies that are doing other things?
We have a very strong interest and strong talent and skills to deal with climate issues. We are part of the government-wide climate change science program. In fact, one of our people is the leader of that program, Dr. Bill Brennan. We contribute across the full spectrum of climate services in general, from research and up to products that our weather service puts out regularly for people, which was mentioned a little earlier in our experimentation to be more efficient. So we have the laboratories that do the modeling. The Princeton Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Laboratory's model is ranked in the top of the models that was used in the IPCC report, which just came out earlier in February. We have the satellites that are used. Some of the data is climate quality. A lot of it is not. We are we're at the verge of an era where we need to build more climate satellite instruments that provide the right kinds of accuracy for climate variables. But what we have, NOAA provides and uses. We maintain the depository for all of our climate information. We have the Climate Data Center. Basically, the Library of Congress for scientific information on climate is maintained inside NOAA. We have the delivery service, weather forecast offices, to provide the products to the people, to the public, to emergency managers. So we have you might say sort of a full-service range of activities that we're engaged in. We also do assessments. Because of the impact of climate change on living marine resources and coastal resources, where we have legislation that requires us to maintain activities in those areas for fisheries, as we just mentioned. So we are a full-service climate organization. It is one of our four strategic goals: climate change and planning and reacting to climate change for the future. I have organized the whole NOAA enterprise into four themes. We have one manager that manages climate services and deals with that whole arena. So we're very much engaged in it from A to Z.
So, for example, in the satellites, do you pay for the satellites that you mentioned? Or?
Yeah, I forgot to mention the NASA role. NASA builds the research satellites, and really most of our climate satellites today are research satellites. And so they're one-of-a-kind research instruments that have been put into place, and they're being used to further our climate records. NOAA operates and maintains the operational satellites. So we have a constellation of satellites that ranges from two in a geostationary orbit that are constantly looking at both coasts of the United States, and that's good for hurricanes and severe weather. And then we have polar orbiting satellites that have an orbit of 90-some minutes that circle the Earth and provide, they're much lower orbit. They're not 22,000 miles, they're down at 500 miles or so, and they provide much of the data that goes into our models. So the satellite, those are operational satellites, and the NPOS program, which I talked about, is sort of the next generation polar orbiting satellite. We're trying to move climate instruments from the research into operational, and that's part of the issue of the difficulty of building the NPOS program and the risk involved in doing that. So we've had to stretch out the movement of those instruments from NASA satellites to NOAA operational satellites. Let me stop. Does that help?
Yeah. Who pays for the delivery of the satellites into space? Does NASA do that, or do you have to pay them to do that?
We pay the Commerce Department budget, and my part of the Commerce Department budget contains the money for the operational satellites.
Okay.
The research satellites, and we also use that data for weather forecasting, are operated and funded by NASA. So we feed off and need the Earth observing part of NASA's budget to help us with our climate services and weather services delivery.
Well, talk to me about is it absent the plus-ups that you hope to get, I guess, as this goes through the process. If without those, you do all right on the things you've just been describing, or do those get tight as well as, I know the overhead is particularly tight without, in other words, the ability to pay staff is particularly difficult without those plus-ups, right?
It is, but let me say, first of all, I support the President's budget. So we have tried to craft a budget which includes enough money for pay raises for all of our people. And so my plea generally to Congress and certainly the House has been to support the President's budget. We generally have been reduced. The House mark has generally been reduced for NOAA, not increased. So that's been part of the dynamic that shapes our operating from year to year. But the President's budget has been crafted. We have tried to craft a budget that will maintain the services with the right amount of inflation, that funds this year's increment for these satellites at exactly what's needed, 100%. And again, I will fight for the money for next year and the next year, and I will keep going until we get these things in place. We've also included, I think, which is very important for this committee, in the 2007 budget, we've included $19 million to help return climate sensors to the NPOS program that we've had to stretch, or let's not say to the program itself, but to find alternative ways, if necessary, put them on other satellites, free-flying satellites, have other agreements with our international partners that launch satellites, the commercial industry. So we are looking very hard, and there's money there to try to ensure that we don't lose any data continuity from the sensors that we've had to stretch out because of the NPOS development difficulties.
You mentioned something interesting. I'm over
Please, go
something.
ahead.
But you just mentioned something interesting, that is the international cooperation. I take it a fair amount of the information that you gather is shared with folks around the world. So actually, it's in effect assistance to the rest of the world that we're providing with weather. Is that right? I mean, we freely share this information, or is it available to the worldwide community? Or
we do. We share the information, and we have worked through the World Meteorological Organization for some 80 years to build a network around the world. It's an example for what I use for a global Earth observing system of systems, which we're also working on for more areas, to be able to share the information, because our weather comes from China and the Pacific Ocean. In fact, a number of years ago, the Europeans loaned us a satellite when we had one that had difficulty. We have helped the Japanese when their satellite went down with one of our older ones that was in orbit. So there's an international group that looks at trying to maintain a continuous constellation and weather information, because everyone needs it and we all benefit from it.
how dominant are we in that area? I mean, in other words, does the world depend on us, or are we depending on them, or is it mutual, or are we the big players, or?
We're big players, obviously, because the United States is a big player on everything, and so NOAA is a unique concept. The rest of the world hasn't caught up with the NOAA idea yet, which is bringing together Earth and atmospheric and ocean organizations together to provide the interdisciplinary information for climate change, for ecosystem management, for improving warnings, weather and warnings, and that sort of thing. But so we are dominant in a sense that we're a large agency that brings together scientific disciplines in a way that other nations have not done yet. But quite frankly, we need other nations, because we can't observe the weather over Russia the same way they can, or with their geostationary satellites. So that international collaboration is very important and actually existed through the Cold War.
And so that's a constant updating kind of thing? I mean, we're constantly getting in and sharing information, getting it and sharing it.
It's constantly being sent to our data centers and then being made available through internet and high-speed lines. You can go and look at our center, and you can look at a composite of all the satellites, and I invite any of the members to come over to our operations center. It's in Suitland. It's not far to go. It's an easy trip. You can look at a composite of all the geostationary satellite data in one shot. You can go to Europe at EUMETSAT and look at it in their headquarters. You can go to Japan, Meteorological and JAXA, their science space agency, and see similar things. This is an extraordinary, when you look at all the other international problems we have, this is one that is very importantly consummated in the right direction.
You're welcome. Mr. Beard.
Thank you. I want to go back, if I may, Admiral, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just trying to get some numbers, actually. You have available the numbers in terms of where your budget for permitting personnel will be, if it's broken down that way for this year versus the last, say, couple?
We have line items that have that in there. I don't have that off the top of my head. I'll be happy to provide you.
Would you?
The sections where we do permitting and what the work our budget loading is in those areas.
Right. That would be helpful. And related to that, how is that line item determined? I mean, does someone look and say, look, here's what an average human being, not an average, but you've got exceptional people work for you. So an exceptional human being who's processing permits. This is what they can do. This is the permitting load as we see it now. This is the shortfall. This is the waiting list. This is the cost. Does somebody look at that?
We do that, and at the end, given the allocations that we have to make decisions on how much we can put in each of the areas that are worthwhile spending money on, and usually this area comes up each year as being one that needs, and I add money to it.
Okay. That was part of my question, is how important is this scene? I can tell you back home.
It's very important.
Okay.
And I'm right there with you.
Okay.
I agree that money spent in this area is well worth the effort.
But my friend from Texas was talking about the issue of fish. We have some interesting harvest dynamics in our state. We spend hundreds of millions of dollars a year trying to restore enlisted salmon. Then on their way back, they get nailed by a host of harvest activities, some human, some non-human. We've actually been working with NIMS on the issue of sea lion predation. So we've got marine mammal, which is not endangered in the case of California sea lion, eating 2 to 3%, maybe more, of the return at one dam alone, 3% of the returning endangered listed species. And we're working actually with NIMS out in the district to try to address that. We're also working with our sports fishermen. I don't know if this applies to your species, but there's a thing called survival boxes that the net fisheries use, so that when you bring a fish in and it's one of the listed fish, we actually clip the fins of the hatchery fish so you can distinguish a hatchery fish from a listed natural fish. And if you have caught a natural fish in your net, or really we don't use it enough on the commercial or the troll fishery, if you caught a listed fish, you put it in a little box, and the box has circulating cold oxygenated water, and though they look dead when you put them in, they rally and have a remarkable survival rate after that. And I don't know if it would apply down where you're at, but it's a pretty astonishing thing to see. And anyway, I just want to commend NIMS for working on that. I think this harvest issue in the Pacific Northwest, as we look at salmon recovery, we talk about the 4 H's, as you know, Admiral. We talk about habitat, hydro, hatcheries, and harvest. I think harvest has not been looked at enough. Not to say that it hasn't been looked at, but common sense says if these fish have managed to survive the rigors of the ocean, and they're coming back and they're laden with 2,000 or 3,000 eggs, and they're the ones that are going to reproduce, and that's when we kill them, or we let sea lions kill them, that's a pretty counterintuitive strategy. It'd like be building a neonatal intensive care unit and putting snipers on the roof so nobody can get in. If we do all these things to restore habitat, we ask landowners and farmers and foresters and cities and governments to improve the cleanliness of our water, the temperature of our water, the quality of habitat, which we do, and then we are not as discriminating as we can be in the harvest, then we're making a mistake. And I'd like to work with you further on that. Your folks out there have been very good to work with, but I just want to put that marker down. And anything you can do to continue to increase the personnel so that we have I guess at some point, I don't expect you to do it here, I'd like some target in mind of how long we think the average reasonable project from application to permit approval should take, and then ask the staffing levels of your entity, the Corps of Engineers predominantly, because it's really you two folks who tend to be, with Fish and Wildlife a little bit, but to have some reasonable time frame that we think we could tell our consumers, this is how long it's going to take you to get a permit, so you can plan that, and then hire staff and train staff and deploy staff accordingly. That's what I'd like us to do, and maybe we can have a dialogue about that.
I hear you, and I will work with you, sir.
Thank you, Admiral.
Mr. Chair, if I could actually respond to or make a comment about Mr. Inglis's question regarding climate. The Coalition, which includes the Red Cross, by the way, believes that greater investments in climate really need to be made. For example, the outbreak and spread of infectious diseases that affect human health is of great interest to the Friends Coalition. And this is an area where climate and weather delivery systems can play a very important role, both in natural systems like outbreak of mosquitoes and then the migration of birds that can carry diseases and the like. And NOAA is the agency that not only has the data archive that can be mined to look for some of these relationships, but NOAA has the National Radar Network that can actually track some of the migrations of birds and insects, believe it or not. That's data that actually contaminates the data that they need to use for winds and precipitation, but it actually is useful it may be useful for health and spreads of pandemics or spreads of diseases. So these are areas where NOAA has the capability and the capacity to actually contribute to climate, weather, human health, but for which there's no funding presently. And, an investment of $25 to $50 million a year would begin that process. And NOAA is the agency that the Friends Coalition looks to for climate information, for climate data and information. For example, I'll turn to another area, sea level. NOAA has the repositories, and in fact, NOAA is the agency that has maintained the continuous time series of sea level back to the early 1900s around the coastal waters of the United States, including the Great Lakes. So those data really do establish the sea level rise, the sea level trend, and the sea level variability record, which, believe it or not, if you don't know what those overall trends are, and you don't know how changes in sea level occur from season to season, you can't even initialize a surge inundation model properly, either off the North Carolina coast when a hurricane is bearing down, or on the Texas coast. So these climate activities that could be occurring within the agency are not, because once again the Friends Coalition believes that the agency is undercapitalized.
Yeah, or figure out whether a ship can make it under a bridge, as we were talking the other day.
Yeah.
By the way, I assure you that there are mosquitoes large enough in South Carolina to show up on radar.
Individual?
I can assure you there are in Texas as well. No, before Mr. Baird left, I was going to make an offer to him that we each do a little research. He could come down and find out some of the problems that we face with some of the with some of the red snapper problems. If he would in turn invite me up to come up to find out what some of the problems are with those steelhead salmon.
We'll be happy to do that, Mr. Chairman.
That'd be good. And we might even enlist Mr. Diaz-Balart to go prove that there are differences between Eastern Gulf and Western Gulf in the quality of fish. Here. Okay. Let me go back, if I may, to a question about the restructuring of the InPost program. As a result of the Nunn-McCurdy restructuring, many sensors vital to monitoring weather and climate were eliminated. The weather quality data that will be collected from the remaining InPost sensors won't be precise enough to meet the needs of climate change monitoring and science. You provided us with the January 2007 white paper that NASA and NOAA prepared at the direction of Dr. Marburger, the Director of the Office of Science and Technology Policy. And you told us and told the committee last year that InPost would be built with the capacity to house all the sensors. The January 2007 white paper recommended that 3 sensors be restored to InPost. Are these sensors going to be restored?
We have been able to, with, as I mentioned, the allocation within the 2007 budget to put one of the sensors back on, the OMPS limb sensor. We believe we can put that back on right now. We have money to look at how to get the others on, but at this point we are still doing cost estimates and doing alternatives to be able to handle the replacement or the sustainment of the sensors that are mentioned in the study that you have that we turned into to Dr. Marburger.
What level of funding is required to do all 3?
I don't have a precise number off at this point for it.
Speculate. Just give me an approximate.
But over a period of 5 or 6 years, it's probably a total of $300 or $400 million. I mean, we're talking, and maybe more, but I mean it's in the hundreds of millions. Okay, to deal with this over a longer period of, not in one budget, but as a cost stream over a period of time to get all of them back into some position, either on NPOs or on another bus.
Why would we not include a request for that in the 2008 budget, knowing that Congress has really pushed for this and wanted it to be done?
I don't believe we have the fidelity to come up here and support nickel by nickel how that money would be spent and give you an honest plan that we'd stand up and say this is going to work. We need to do the work we're doing now, which is to provide alternatives and look at the costs of various and have a good estimate, a good independent cost estimate of what it would take to do this.
Waiting 3, 4, 5 years, think we'll be able to have it?
I plan to do it this year. I mean, this is
So,
we plan to have a set of alternatives in the next few months.
So will we be able to have it almost certainly in the FY09 budget?
It's my goal to try to do that. Yes.
As we wait longer, what kind of estimate might you guess that it's going to cost additional because of the time differential? And can we speed it up and save money? And wouldn't that be wise for us to do?
I am all for speeding it up as quickly as possible. Part of the issue is to not incur the risk. The reason they're not on there today is not because we don't want the sensors or the data. It's because of the risk in building a satellite and having something that will work, that will pass the test, and will be launched on time. So we have the issue of ensuring that we don't increase the risk to the program in terms of cost and schedule. And given that we meet that, then I absolutely agree that we should do it as efficiently and rapidly as technically feasible. We should do it efficiently. I'm all for it.
Okay. Let me just squeeze one more question in, and then I'm going to turn this over to the ranking member on the Science Committee. But recently, and it's probably been 2 years, maybe 2.5 years ago, a tragic event occurred down in southeast Texas when a doctor, he was a dentist actually, was launching a boat, I think in Galveston Bay, and fell, scraped his leg and got infected by an organism called Vibrio vulnificus. It's a virus. It lumped in with other organisms we considered to be harmful algal bloom organisms, and he died from that infection within about 7 or 8 days. With respect to our water monitoring programs, are coastal waters monitored year-round, or are the monitoring programs restricted to particular times of the year, fishing seasons, peak recreation seasons when people are swimming?
A lot of those monitoring systems are operated or connected to an EPA network, and I'm really not the right guy to tell you exactly how that goes. But we in NOAA worry continuously about the health generally of harmful algal blooms and potentially other life-threatening organisms that live in the water. So we use satellites to help monitor the color. We have used our radars and our weather information, and we actually now put out harmful algal bloom forecasts for the Gulf of Mexico, for Florida, and we're looking to move that into the Texas area in this next year. We believe this is a very important area. There's $9 million for harmful algal blooms in our request, and we look to expand our ability to provide early warning and actually try to, in the future, pinpoint where they come from and do something to help mitigate them.
Could be hugely
very important.
Life-threatening situations.
And it goes to what Dr. Pietrafesa mentioned about health and the atmosphere and the ocean. They're directly related.
Very good. I will recognize Mr. Hall, the ranking member on the Science Committee. My friend from Texas.
The way it is when you're in a minority, nothing works.
I knew that. I knew all about that.
I'm fine, thank you, sir.
You're way too young to be an admiral, but I admire you.
Could have at least lost some of his hair by now, or have it turning white, huh?
I think so. You ever say clean sweep down fore to aft?
Yes, sir, I have.
I heard that a lot of times. I thank you for working with us last year on the National Integrated Drought Information Systems Act. The NIDIS program authorized by that law going to lessen the economic and environmental devastation caused by drought by equipping our farmers and water resource managers with the tools they need to prepare for and respond to drought situations. With improved monitoring and forecasting, our economy is going to be spared what we think to be billions of dollars in drought-related damages every year. Now, this was a result of a close collaboration between NOAA and university scientists and state natural resource managers. It's an excellent example of how a small investment in environmental monitoring and prediction, I think it's around $4 million in your FY 2008 budget request, can have an enormous benefit to the nation. Do you have similar programs in the pipeline that would address the pressing needs, other pressing needs? If so, describe a few of them.
First of all, let me thank you for your help and your work in passing the NIDIS bill. It was extremely valuable to us because we have been working with Western governors for a number of years on trying to build the kind of a program that would be very useful for the federal government and the states. We also have worked hard locally with air quality monitoring. Air quality is very important. We now have been able to provide air quality forecasting for the whole country, and that began in the similar partnerships with our research universities, with support from this committee, and work with the EPA and local jurisdictions. And we're working from ozone forecasts now into particulate forecasts or aerosols. That's very important for asthma and other types of respiratory issues that people have. It will also help us manage our air quality in various places, because we'll be able to tell where it's coming from, where it's going, and what the concentrations might be. So air quality is very important to us. As I mentioned, the harmful algal bloom issue, about looking at health along our coasts. We have, for the first time, the administration did put some money in the Human Health Initiative for Oceans, which Congress has been a strong supporter of, and we look forward to working with Congress this year for that, with that program. We are looking at improving our ability to monitor wildfires and provide better information to the people who fight those fires. We are looking at a better carbon network. We've just put something called a carbon tracker on our website from built out in Boulder, which will allow everyone to take a look at where is the carbon in our air. It's experimental. We haven't got a full network yet, but we're building the tools to help provide information to individual citizens as well as policymakers. So those are a few of the things that we're working on, sir.
I'm sure they help you in monitoring and forecasting and helping to plan that can really be meaningful. We went through just a terrible drought there in East Texas this last time. Worst, certainly in my memory is longer than anybody's in here. We were very pleased to finally get this bill through and finally get the president to sign it. The one farmer called me and said, "Well, now can you make it rain?" This bill does everything short of that, but it plans for it. And you know, we had back in, no woman in here, and very few of you men remember the 30s, but in the 30s, during that from 30 to 40, I was a paper boy, and I delivered papers, but I read my papers, and I read about the weather. It seemed like I was always concerned about the weather. And they had a guy that I watched radio then a lot. I watched WRR radio. That's all we had. But we had a professor on there, a doctor, I think Archer. I'm not sure what his name was, but he would tell us what the weather was every day, because he had a new breakthrough. He had, of all things, and nobody else in the world, I guess, had one, a sling psychometer. And man, that was up to date. And he would say what the weather was going to be at 6 o'clock every morning. I'd be back in after delivering my papers, and I'd watch him on radio. And I'd listen to him. And there's a guy up at Paris, Texas, about 80 miles on up northeast, or 60 miles, something like that. he would listen to him and predict just the opposite every year, and he was right about 80% of the time. So I don't know if getting all this equipment is good or bad, but it's great to have that information, and it's great to see the years ahead and see how much it's going to benefit them. And I thank both of you for your work and your report and for being here today, and I thank this chairman for calling this meeting. I yield back.
Thank you, sir.
I don't have to turn it off.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. It's always a pleasure. I certainly didn't mean to slight you along the way, Dr. Pietrafesa, with all of my questions seem to be going to Admiral Lautenbacher, but I certainly appreciate both of you participating. And I did have a question about the role that NOAA's National Hurricane Center played that I'd like to ask of you. Obviously, it's played a critical role during the devastating '05 hurricane season. How can hurricane forecasting be improved to better warn the public of such disasters? Obviously, it's not going to be that piece of equipment that Mr. Hall was just referring to, can we make it better, and is the budget adequate to achieve the improvements in hurricane forecasting that we would all like to see happen?
I don't think the budget is adequate, but NOAA, I would have to compliment the agency and the Admiral for the efforts that the agency has put forward. For example, the new P3 that is coming online will allow another degree of freedom in terms of being able to make more measurements. It turns out that the stepped microwave frequency sensor that has been deployed over the last year or the last several hurricane seasons has shown that the winds that are blowing just above the surface of the ocean are in fact very different than the winds aloft. And those winds are the winds that are actually driving the wave field and also driving the surface currents. And if one is going to do an adequate job well in advance, 4 to 3 to 2 days to 1 day out of a hurricane making landfall, one really must know what that wind field is like and the wave field that it's driving along with the current field. And you have to know not only the speeds and directions of the wind, but you have to understand the asymmetries that are built into each one of these vortices, these hurricane vortexes. There is no symmetric hurricane. They are all anti-symmetric, which means that they have very unusual configurations around their eye and beyond where the radius of maximum winds occurs. And that's an advance that has occurred through NOAA efforts. Now that data then needs to be assimilated into the hurricane weather research forecast model and into the surge and inundation and flood models that ensue. So that's an activity that NOAA is moving towards, but once again, we believe that they're undercapitalized in that area. Also, the buoys, the observing network that's out there, once again, NOAA is building out. It's still in the process of building that system out. But that system has to be more complicated than it was in the past. We now understand that the water and the air, the atmosphere and the ocean and the Gulf waters and the loop current and the eddies that are shed, the warm core rings, and on the east coast of the United States, it's the filaments, the Gulf Stream filaments. Those systems exchange heat, mass, and momentum between the two. They're interactively coupled in real time. And so the hurricane, for example, Katrina went through 9 stages of change. She went from a 0 to a 1 up to a 5 and back down to a 3 when she finally beached herself. So if you're an emergency manager or you're in charge of evacuating folks, the models now are capable of actually getting down to resolution of 100 feet spatial resolution on land in terms of where and when the inundation is going to occur. But if you don't have the forcing, the wind fields correct, and you don't know that that event is going to de-intensify, you're going to get it wrong. And so you can stage, if you're going to evacuate areas and put everybody on the highway at the same time going in one direction, and you've got 4 lanes, and you have to station the highway patrol at the on and off ramps to make sure that nobody's getting on in the wrong direction, you have to have the best information possible. And NOAA can provide that, but not yet. So the mathematical architectures are there, the new hurricane weather research forecast model is there, the interactive coupling with the ocean system models has advanced to the point where we're actually running one in my own shop, but it requires more investment in research. And so the short answer is NOAA's still undercapitalized in this area, but it's moving in that direction.
Excellent. I think those are more examples of just how we do get a return on the monies that we do invest. I think it's critically important that we push ourselves to make those things happen. I know what kind of money was expended in life just in evacuating some towns that ultimately didn't have to evacuate. The people who were best off were those who got frustrated, unfortunately, and went back home and set the storm out. But and that's the wrong message to send to other people. Many stories, as we've read, about people who couldn't make the trip from wherever they started to wherever they were going and ended up dying in the process or at the end of it, and very tragically so. So great opportunity for us to push as hard as we can possibly push to make some of these things happen when we know that the technology exists. Mr. Diaz-Balart, you've been awfully quiet over there. Can we impose upon you for some words of wisdom or questions? Push it and it'll come on. Now try.
Hello? Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, before I was going to follow up actually on your question, Mr. Chairman. And Doctor, you gave a very good explanation. Now, you know, when I represent parts of Miami and Dade County and parts of Collier. So the ratings for the National Hurricane Center broadcasts during hurricane season in the part of the state that I represent far exceed the NFL's. It is the thing to watch. And there's been incredible progress on the accuracy of where a hurricane is going to strike. But as far as the strength of the hurricane, obviously that's where we have some weaknesses. Doctor, when you were giving this explanation, how far are we to have the same type of really significant advances in the ability to, you see the advances in the ability to track where a hurricane is going to land, and the advances there have been just incredible. How far are we to be able to really be able to forecast, the strength of a hurricane when it's going to land? And is it just a funding issue? Is it a technology issue? Is it a little bit of both?
It's both. As I said, the new stepped microwave system is really an important new technological advance that's been introduced into the capabilities area, and NOAA is now flying that in real time.
Is there like a timetable? And is there? I mean, I know it's not a fair question, but is there? Can we say within 2 years, 5 years, we're going to have? Is there any way to do that? Any guess?
Yeah. Actually, the NOAA Science Advisory Board actually put together at the request of the Admiral an external review panel that looked into that issue specifically about could we make advances in hurricane intensity forecasting, and what kind of time period are we looking at? And we're looking at a 5-year period of time with significant investments in that area. It's a half decade. The mathematical tools are on the shelf, but it takes people once again. And it takes putting together partnerships both from NOAA itself, from within the agency, and from without the agency. So you've got to join the expertise. You've got to leverage the expertise of the academic community that's external to the agency. And it turns out there are not a lot of hurricane modelers and hurricane technologists in the United States. It's a very small community of scientists and engineers, but they are capable and are willing to work together to create this capability. And we're really looking at the order of a half decade, which is very short time, but it's going to take, you know, the several tens of millions of dollars per year of investment to get this done.
Mr. Chairman, also on a separate note, I represent, as you know, the Everglades. So with all due respect, my mosquitoes are bigger than yours.
I don't want to find out the difference.
I've been chewed on by them too many times in my lifetime. Even Mr. Hall can remember some big mosquitoes in East Texas, huh? Started to say which NOAA, but I think I got that. Last question I will ask, unless others have some way to or desire to wrap up. The impact of NOAA's tight budget. It's got to have some impact on the ability to fund both extramural research and to do some of the in-house research that's necessary to really do the kinds of things that's necessary. Would you comment on the impact of that, Dr. Pietrafesa?
Well, given NOAA's present budget, from the perspective of the external community, NOAA is doing the best job it can to maintain the services that it provides presently. But in the face of you know, increases in salaries and having to pay for turning the lights on and off, you know, it is really stretched. And so we understand that when push comes to shove, it's the external activities that are most likely to be cut. So while we understand that, it's difficult for us to accept that, the external community, because if you look at the leveraged assets, both intellectual and physical assets that the external community brings to the table, there is an enormous amount of people power and intellectual power and compute power and technological power that the external community brings to the table. And the external community has had a long and rich tradition of partnering with the agency, which has in fact led to many of the advances from research to operations to applications that we have experienced. But in fact, when the Weather Forecast Office at the Raleigh-Durham Airport, I come from Raleigh, North Carolina, was moved to the NC State campus, within 2 years, NOAA headquarters gave that Weather Forecast Office an award called a NOAA Unit Citation Award. And that citation award recognizes outstanding research and then transition from creating new research tools to moving them to new operational forecast tools. Papers were published, papers were given at conferences, but the point was that the forecasts that were emanating from that office improved so dramatically that NOAA headquarters gave that forecast office this award. And that's an award for advances in research and operations, which is very unusual. It's the first forecast office to ever receive that award. It shows what can be done if you put NOAA scientists and staff together with the external community, and you leverage the assets. You challenge the external community to become engaged. You engage them in interesting problems, and you bring students to the table. And in fact, that ensures that NOAA will have the workforce that it's going to need for the future when you engage the students. And that's one issue that we're seriously concerned about, is that when external funds are cut, the first to go are the students. And so you compromise the future of this agency, the scientific and technological excellence of the agency, because the workforce that could become engaged, that would become engaged, is lost. And so that's a serious issue.
Thank you. Mr. Hall.
I want to talk about the future and conservation. And this may be wild and crazy, but it's something that's been on my mind for a long time. And maybe you could give us some advice on it or guidance, but we have to start conserving our water. If we're not going to get the rains as we predict them or as we expect them or as they were over the last 50 years or something, how unreasonable is it to think that we ought to be studying, creating some kind of study today maybe not a paid study, but a study of maybe two people from your agency, two from some other that would be unpaid, that would meet maybe 4 times a year or quarterly to talk about the future. And I'm thinking in terms of, Texas is a typical state. I guess every state has its own variances of mountains and hills and tributaries and all that, but Texas has mountains that get water. It goes down, trickles down, gets to finally to one of the tributaries and into the ocean and washes away. How unreasonable is it to think in terms of one day, and I say this when a good bottle of water costs as much as a good bottle of beer now, and you got to go to really thinking about the value of water. That how unreasonable is it to have $1 million subterranean tanks in the desert and at the foot of the hills or in strategic places to capture this water and not let it go all the way down to the sea. Too expensive now to do it, but there was a time when it was too expensive to put an escape module in the NASA vehicle. But we're going to put one in there now with the deaths and losses we have. And if we have a different time, day and time, and the rains come at a different time, or they don't come, or they do come, but not as, with more time between them, why not capture that water and keep it and think about it and have somebody study? And I won't be here, and none of us in this room will be here when you'll ever need something like that, but someone's going to be here to think in terms of studying and maybe have huge underground tanks to collect that water and not let it go off to the sea. How impractical is that? I don't want to get put away for recommending something like that, or people getting a net after me.
I'd have to go with you if you got put away, because I think you're right on.
Yeah, and
But somebody ought to be studying that.
Yeah,
seems to me.
and I agree. I asked my staff when I took over to give me their top 10 problems for the environment for the future. Forget what we do, forget our budget, tell me what our problems are. And when I tabulated that, water. And so that's why we have in NOAA now weather and water. Water is one of our 4 major themes, and we're trying to work the problem you talked about, the watershed management down to the ocean. How do we deal with that? And my crazy idea is that we're going to need a water distribution system at some point. So that would include tanks, it would include pipes, it would include pumps. I mean, we're going to need water. I agree with you, and I think that we all need to start thinking about the future and how we deal with water.
I've
It's
gone
a precious
in,
commodity.
I have even thought about it at my home, and I put a 2,000-gallon tank at the back of my home at the end of my series of garages there, and you'd be surprised at how much water comes off of your roof. And I have it goes into that tank, and then for the swimming pool in front, I have a 450-gallon tank. Catches it, I save about $100 a month there with filling it up with the evaporative procedure and things, and for the pool. It makes sense, and I think someday everybody will have that. I had a little guy come out from the city about 3 weeks ago. I was watering on a day when it wasn't my day to water. And that's kind of embarrassing, you know. But one of my neighbors, and I got a few Democratic neighbors there that will call in on me every now and then, and we're, you know, my wife and I are fighting too loud, or we're having arguments or something. But I was watering out there on Friday, and that guy's calendar said it was Monday, you know. And he came up to me, he said, "Congressman," he said, "I sure hate to come out here." And I said, "Well, what's the problem?" He said, "Well, you're not supposed to be watering." I said, "No, I think I have a right to be watering." He said, "Congressman, you don't have a right to be watering." He said, "And my dad's going to kill me if I have to give you a ticket." Anyway, he went on and on like that a little bit. Pretty soon I said, "Well, I tell you, I'm different to other people." He said, "Congressman, you're not indifferent to us now. You just Ralph Hall down here, but you have to comply the same rules that everybody else does." I said, "Well, here," I handed him my hose. He wouldn't take it, and I made him take it. And I said, "Now come on, follow this hose." He followed the back around the house and got up to the tank there, where it was my tank, my water that I was watering with. he said, God, I'm never so glad to see anything. I thought I was going to have to go home and tell my dad I'd given you a ticket. But I think everybody's going, I'm thinking about going into that business, of putting those in and letting people pay them out. The chairman and I may put that together. And he furnish the money. Well, I've got the idea. He ought to furnish the money for me.
Would that be considered new technology? Would that be considered new technology?
Well, not terribly new, but it makes sense and keeps you from getting a ticket too. 'Cause I probably would have been wondering whether it's my day or not.
Mr. Hall, you raise a very interesting point. You're a man of deep wisdom. Of every quart of water on this planet, if you just take all of the water on this planet and fit it into a quart, there are only 4 drops of that water that's available for our use, fresh water. Only 4 drops. And of those 4 drops, only 1 is available on land, on the surface of land. So that is how precious that supply of water actually is. So, if you use that analogy, so you've really hit on a key issue, availability of fresh water in the future. So we must manage our water resources in a very, very careful way. And so when we alter the environment and we pave the natural environment, particularly the coastal environment, over, and we go from having a system that can absorb the water at a 100% level and retain the fresh water as freshwater lenses under the barrier islands, and we allow it then, once we pave it over, we go from a 100% capability of retaining the water down to a 5%. And we give it up, and we shouldn't do that. We need to have better management of our water systems, our coastal systems and our land-based systems, and we must pay more attention to the availability of fresh water.
Chairman and I may set up a study for something to look at and study it for a while, and then maybe get some people from different agencies that would give some time quarterly to start a plan and start thinking in terms of that, because I think it's important. I yield back my time. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. I think it's tremendous, and I remember as a kid the cistern that was at my grandparents' house, and I know that my grandmother would never wash her hair with anything other than rainwater that had been captured.
And out at front there, we had that same cistern. We had a sock tied around the faucet there. That was to catch the wiggle worms that came through there. And we finally wised up and just poured a little coal oil on top, and that killed the mosquitoes when they laid the eggs. So we were innovative even back in 1910.
Well, there could be. Thank you. I think this has been fascinating. Thank you both for coming to us today. And before I close, I want to say that, obviously your testimonies have been very thoughtful and insightful and most helpful. If there's no objection, the record will remain open for additional statements from members and for answers to any follow-up questions the committee may ask of the witnesses. Without objection, it is so ordered. This hearing is now adjourned. Thank you all. That was fun.